Oh, welcome everyone. Let's look at the Derbonites FPL Game Week 5 preview. So, looking at the games from last week, on the Luton West Ham game, West Ham picking up a comfortable win once again. So, Bowen, Zuma, Paqueta, Ward-Prowse all getting on the point sheet. West Ham have a tough run of fixtures coming up. So, even though they might get some points, it's not guaranteed. I would say be very cautious with your West Ham players. Luton seem to have a very favorable game week, but they've not put in the results that would favor that. So maybe just think carefully before putting in any one of their players. Looking at the Sheffield United and Everton, so this was a tough game. Everton finally getting some points, but also not being able to get the win. Both teams have some tough fixtures coming up. So just think carefully before putting in any players. No specific call outs here for any players from either team. Looking at Brentford and Bournemouth, this again was a tough game. I think Brentford thought they might be able to win this one, but it did not work out for them. They still have a fairly okay fixture list coming up. Newcastle this week, so that's going to be tough. But then Everton and Notts Forest should be able to get some points from there. Bournemouth themselves, they don't have much favourable fixtures throughout the season. However, one call out here is that Solanke is constantly getting points, so might be worthwhile looking at him as one to put on the bench. Looking at the Burnley Tottenham game, so Tottenham just going crazy here on Burnley. Son with that hat trick making a big difference. A lot of points for Spurs players in terms of assists, goals, and bonus points. So well worth it to look at the team. However, if you look at the fixtures list, you can see that after Sheffield United this week, two tough games where they can get points and can get wins. Ange Postecoglou is a good strategist. He seems to have a game plan, but these are not easy fixtures for Spurs. So I would say caution if you're trying to load your team up with Spurs players because of current form. Burnley have still got some tough games ahead of them. They've not been able to get the results that they want from last season. Welcome to the Premier League, boys. It's not that easy. Looking at the Chelsea Forest game, so this was an upset in my eyes. Chelsea, I thought, would get a lot of points and a lot of goals. Didn't at all. Nottingham Forest getting the win. Ilanga putting in a goal, and he's playing really well this season. So a call out if you're looking for a good, reasonably priced midfielder. He's having a much better season than he ever did at United. Awoniyi getting only the assist this time, but still in the points, which is really important. Looking at the fixtures, Forest have got Burnley and then a couple of tough weeks coming up. So if you don't have any players, I wouldn't bring them in just yet. Ilanga's also picked up a knock in the international break, so may not play. Chelsea seem to have a favourable fixture list on paper, but it's anyone's guess how these results would go. I would still call out pulling out guys like Jackson, Chilwell. They're doing really well. Enzo as well. So just think about that when you're looking at Chelsea. Um, Looking at Manchester City and Fulham again, Haaland coming good after having a tough week against Sheffield United. With that hat trick, he also gave Alvarez some points there, so assists as well as a goal. Alvarez is not a bad idea. He's about half the price of Haaland, getting a lot of game time this season, playing as a second forward, and really well worth it looking at getting him. They have some injuries coming in, so Manchester City have some issues. Grealish is definitely injured and not playing. De Bruyne is not playing as well. They have some changes happening at the back as well. So just be cautious about the Man City players that you select. But they will always have, I think, throughout the season, favorable fixtures ahead of them. So it's looking good for the next 3 weeks to keep in the Man City players. And then from Fulham, on paper, looks like they have some good fixtures coming up. They have had some good results as well. So I think okay to pick up the Cordova Reed. He's been getting in within the points, and this Pereira as well. Maybe not this week, but definitely in within the points if you're looking for some good priced players to put into your team. Looking at the Brighton Newcastle, for me, I didn't think that this one would be as a big a scoreline as it did. Both teams playing well, both deserve their place in the Premier League. Ferguson coming in with a hat trick that I think very few expected, so he's not been on a lot of the fantasy Premier League managers' radar, but also picking up a knock there, so he's a bit doubtful for this week in case you were thinking of drafting him in. Pretty tough fixture against Manchester United, and we'll speak a little bit about them later. But then after that, Bournemouth, Aston Villa. So still good to hang on to your Brighton players, I think, for the next couple of weeks. And looking at Newcastle, finally, it looks like they're out of that rough start of the season. So in game week 5, they've got Brentford, which should be a fair game. and then Sheffield United and Burnley coming up. So for those Newcastle fans, now might be the time for you to start drafting in your players. Then looking at the Crystal Palace Wolves game, this one was one that will probably be a relegation battle further down the line. Both teams know they need the points here early. Crystal Palace with Roy Hodgson is a formidable force for those teams mid to low table. He eked out the win, even though he's lost a lot of good players this season. Call out is Eze, even from last season. He really has done well. And a defender called Anderson, he's doing really well as well for Crystal Palace, maybe not in this game. From Wolves, they've also lost a lot of key players. Good to get this 2 goals in, but just struggling to get those results. Both teams have some fairly hectic fixtures coming up. Aston Villa is not easy for Crystal Palace, and then Manchester United in game week 7. And looking at Wolves with Liverpool and Man City squeezing in between Luton, I would not recommend any players from these teams, but if you need them, you know where to go. Looking at Liverpool, Aston Villa, a very comfortable win for Liverpool. Not what I expected. Aston Villa seem to be either decimating teams or capitulating, so it's one of the two. Liverpool have a fairly good fixture list coming in for the next 3 weeks. If you have their players, if you want to bring in players, then they might not be a bad shout. Salah's been super consistent, more than 5 points every single week for the last 4 game weeks. And Alexander Arnold, unfortunately, picking up a knock in the international break, so he will not be playing this week. Just keep an eye on that. For Aston Villa, they still have a lot of talent. Matty Cash, Moussa Diaby, now up front also Nicolo Zaniolo playing. So they really do have some good players in there. Not the best result for them, but I think still worth a look. Crystal Palace this week, then Chelsea, Brighton, both games which they can challenge in. But yeah, maybe a team to consider. Then looking at the Arsenal Manchester United, this one for me personally was quite a disappointing one. Manchester United taking the lead early through Rashford, then getting an equalizer from Odegaard and losing with 2 late goals by Rice and Jesus. So it makes it look worse than it was. All sorts of trouble at Manchester United. Anthony is now on an extended leave because he's also been accused now of domestic violence. Jadon Sancho having some disciplinary issues, now been demoted to train with the reserve team. And of course, injury worries with Rafael Varane out, also injured. And now Sofian Amrabat, who we spoke about as the transfer coming in, has also picked up a knock and probably will not play this season. Hoyland might not start, so they're back without a striker. And of course, their centre back pairing, hopefully, Victor Lindelof is looking like he is good to start, as well as Martinez. So looks like it could be an okay game for them. They have some good fixtures coming up. They really can't afford to throw those away. So I would look for points from Burnley and Crystal Palace. Brighton might be a tough one considering their result last week. Arsenal, again, like Man City, are probably going to have a lot of favourable fixtures. Everton this week, who are really struggling, as we spoke about. I would back your Arsenal players if you have them. Spurs is a tough one, being the derby match, but again, it really does depend on the day. Looking at the fixture ratings over the next couple of weeks, so the ones to favor, the teams to favor, Arsenal that we spoke about, Liverpool and Chelsea. Of course, you can see that they have some fairly good fixtures coming up. And then Brentford, Man City, and Newcastle. Brentford with a tough one this week against Newcastle, and then after that, fairly good. So if you're looking to build a 3 week team, this is around where I would focus. And then looking at the teams that I would avoid, Spurs again, making a call out here that they could get points. They are in good form, but just looking at the fixture rating, Arsenal, Liverpool back to back is not an easy run. Bournemouth as well. So Bournemouth, Sheffield, Notts Forest, Wolves. I mean, they will have a lot of tough games this season. Burnley as well. Everton as well. So no surprises here. West Ham is the other one that I would call out, which is a fairly good and useful team, but just a lot of tough fixtures coming up. So that's our wrap up for this week. I know it's a bit late, so hopefully you can get your changes in before the deadline is due in the next 2 hours. And I will catch you for the results on game week 5. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop some comments if you want to see some changes. Bye for now.